I think that one of the good things that's going to come out of a collapse site situation is people are going to have to learn to fix things again. Not only fix things that break down, because you're not going to be able to go and just buy a new one. You're going to have to start relying on ingenuity and patience and skill and resilience and just trying to be creative to fix problems as they arise, and not just simply expect that, oh, well, this isn't working out, I'm going to go get a new one. All of the petty things couples argue about nowadays are not even going to matter one iota. You're not going to see people bickering about the small stuff anymore. If anything, you're going to be concerned about how much food is left and is there going to be food on the table. All I can say is we're going to reach a point where it's no longer a luxury and people aren't going to want to just get rid of something simply because of a few minor inconveniences. And that's what a lot of this shit is when you think about it. The system right now does not support people working things out and getting together. We live in a divorce-based system. It's an industry in itself. I watched a documentary on it not too long ago. But there is a divorce industry. The courts benefit, social services benefit, all the emergency services benefit when there's domestic calls made. There's equal benefit in having them both paying rents in different places and doing the child sharing thing and not having the child under one roof, because you really don't need the child mind anymore. There's video games and there's TV for that. There's social services, there's school counselors, there's the school system in general, So the system is set up not to facilitate nuclear families, but it's set up in the secular sense to facilitate lone wolves, people who are alienated and isolated. And say what you want about Marxism and socialism, but they introduced a concept that was similar to alienation called anomie. And what that is the absence of society providing any moral guidance to individuals. And that is something that the church did do, which was beneficial. Yes, there was lots of issues that come into play when you have the church and the state together. But I think that, having the sanctity of a bond between a man and a woman is a good thing. Now everything points towards this infidelity, the Ashley Madison thing. And when they did the whole Ashley Madison leaked phone numbers, email addresses or something like that, what that does, that just popularizes the idea anymore. You have TV shows like Desperate Housewives. Everything in the grid points towards infidelity. It encourages people to be disloyal. It encourages people to relive their teenage years in their 20s over and over again until they're 70 and 80, and you're getting facelifts and plastic surgery, and you just look like a complete moron because you totally butchered yourself trying to, be this sexual icon that you're not. And everything in the media tries to make us feel like we're not good enough and that we need more and more and that there's always something better and better that we can get. Well, when the collapse happens, that's it. That whole facade, that whole myth is gone. It's dead. And all there is going to be is you and the person who you trusted in the first place, who you had that chemistry with in the first place, and it's not going to be shrouded in all this neurotic bullshit disagreements that you might have right now with one another, where it's, you're arguing about all these trivial, superficial things that really don't matter one bit. That's going to be gone. Because not only is it going to be way too expensive to get a divorce, and people are not going to be as miserable anymore because they're not going to be seeing all these Hollywood myths on TV about how, your life should be absolutely amazing up until the time you die. Reality isn't like that. And people believe that, and they expect that, and they get brainwashed with these TV shows, which is why everybody is unhappy. Life is just not like that. You cannot be in your 20s till the day you die. It's just not realistic. but they infantilize everybody with Facebook, with, you know, all these forms of social media to get women who are in their 60s and 70s trying to act like they're 20 and 30 years old. And men too, you know, it's with the guy who, you know, took the HGH and 70 looks like he's in better shape than 30-year-olds and all this nonsense. You know, it's the same sort of mentality. Yeah, you can be young until the day you die, you know, physically, which is just complete and utter bullshit. So when we move down Maslow's hierarchy of needs, the hierarchy of needs is first we need our physical stuff, then we need our security, then we need love and belongingness, then we need self-esteem, then we need spirituality and self-actualization. Most of us are up here right now in the first world. We have the luxury of trying to constantly improve our self-esteem and self-actualize. The rest of the world doesn't have that luxury. So once we're down here again, once we're forced down here to this bottom of the pyramid where we're just trying to struggle to get our base needs met, our physical needs, medication. Lots of people are feeling the pinch on Medicare right now. Just healthy food, you know, physical health. Once that becomes our central preoccupation, acquiring food, paying the rent, all this other shit up here is not going to matter. You know, we're still going to be sold that in the media that that's what we need, but it's not going to matter nearly as much because until those base level needs are met, we're not able to move up the ladder of human needs. So as much as having this bounty of stuff and all these amenities that have been brought with modern civilization, as great as it's been, it really has not made us any happier in the long run. It's made us a lot busier, and I've talked about all of these things I'm talking about in all of my After the Collapse videos. If you haven't seen them yet, go check them out. If anything, you're probably not going to agree with everything I say, but they're going to be thought-provoking. Alright guys, so you notice I'm in a different t-shirt. I decided to do a little addendum to this video, talk a bit more about how the cult of youth is negatively impacting relationships in the modern day, how nobody can get any satisfaction anymore because we live in such a short attention span, sensation-seeking, impulsive society where everybody wants things fixed right away. Everybody wants to be young and live forever, like the girls on the magazines. Everybody wants to have the perfect, fictitious relationship that they see on television, that we're inundated and brainwashed with on a constant basis, bombarded with these myths about not only how a relationship should be, but, you know, how you don't have to fix anything. You don't have to replace anything. You don't have to repair anything. It's not your duty to do that. And this is all about, you know, the breakdown of the family unit, the secularization of society, the infantilization of society. I just finished watching a video. It was the YouTube Rewind for 2016. I did this big epic rant video that I pulled the plug on posting. I might post it on my other channel, Philosophical Survivalist, because I get a little opinionated in that one, a little overly opinionated. I know this is an opinionated video, but it's still largely apolitical. My whole critique of that video is just this youth cult that we have, in spite of the fact that I think about 60% of the people who use YouTube now are actually over the age of 30. Only 30% are under the age of 30, but every single person on this YouTube Rewind video looks like they're a teenager, even though most of them are going on 30, 35. And you notice that that's a common theme in most Hollywood movies now, is that you're seeing people in their 30s, 40s, you know, the Seth Rogen types, that whole clique. What's the other guy's name? James something. All part of the current comedy clique, the current, you know, we're never going to grow up adults, who Hollywood promotes these myths about, you know, how you should just be able to party forever and that you should forever be a frat boy and you should never have to have any commitments, you should never have children because of course humans are destroying the planet, which we are, but having no kids is not going to help the situation necessarily. It's how we manage the situation. It's not just the eradication of the human race, obviously, or the whole Georgia Guidestone, bring the population down to a manageable level type thing that's going to do it. But you'll find there was that one movie, what's it called? So This Is the End. It's with Seth Rogen. All sorts of suggestive culture in that movie. And what I mean by that is suggesting how people should behave. And that's what movies are usually for. There's always that hidden message in there about how people should act, what people should do. There's an interesting video with Dave Chappelle where he's talking about why every black actor had to wear a dress, and you should go and watch it. I'll post a link to it in the description. It's rather interesting and it's thought-provoking. And he talks about just how Hollywood script writing works, and I thought it was kind of interesting. And of course, lots of people take that to, it's the Illuminati. There very well may be a social engineering component to all of that. I just don't know how esoteric it all becomes. I know some people say it's all about worshiping the devil and Luciferianism and all that stuff and occult type stuff, but that's getting a little off topic. I'm talking about the fact that in a shit hits the fan situation, people are going to have to grow up real fast. Another thing on that YouTube rewind video, this is a cheap little carabiner knife thing that I picked up for a couple bucks. Actually fairly useful for a $2 thing. Anyways, see, I'm totally ADHD, just like the rest of us. We're going from one thing to another. We can't just focus on one thing. But at the end of that YouTube rewind video, they got all these buffoons in cars, doing this whole lip syncing thing. Like, I don't even know how anybody finds that funny, watching a bunch of idiots lip sync things in a car. Like, how is that even? It's the most cliche, dumb shit. I couldn't even stand watching that YouTube rewind thing. Not because I'm jealous of these teeny boppers who they put up there to brainwash the masses with, just because it's annoyingly unimaginative and it's not creative at all, and it's indicative of where YouTube is going. It used to be a hub for grassroots creation where people could go on, make a video, and everybody had a democratic, equal chance of having their stuff seen. Now they went on this thing with the trending feed. The only way you get any exposure is if you're one of the few who's selected to be on this trending feed. And there's about 100 videos on the trending feed at all times, and they're all cherry-picked and hand-picked by YouTube. Whatever YouTube decides is going to go viral, that's what goes viral. If they decide to put their YouTube rewind video up on the first page, well, it's going to get 100 million views in the first few days, as it has. So with this whole cult of youth, it all feeds into this disposable society where we're just taught that we don't have to make anything work, that life is just a series of relationships now where you never get too deeply involved, and at the slightest sign of discomfort you can blow it off, you can break it off, you can get a divorce. And usually, and this has spawned some movements like the MGTOW movement, which in some cases is legitimate, because there definitely is, and there's even lots of female lawyers and politicians and who will agree that the men usually get the short end of the stick in this society when it comes to things like alimony and whatnot. Although the tables are turning with that, but when it comes to divorce, child support, alimony, things like that, men always get the short end of the stick. I can relate to some of the MGTOW grievances. At the same time, I can see the dangers in MGTOW it's kind of like a cop-out. Instead of trying to formulate some sort of solution and try to engage and try to change things as the way they are, we're just kind of dropping out, which essentially just supports that same model, that same lone wolf model, where you want everybody isolated, the whole enemy thing where everybody's alienated, isolated from one another, because if you're talking about men going their own way, then you've basically killed the family. And you may not have been the initiator of that. This is just a reaction of men to this whole, feminization of culture. MGTOW are rebelling against what they perceive to be a very gynocentric culture, which in some ways it is. In a lot of ways, men are still far more successful on the whole. But I think, we're all sort of victims of the same system. Women are exploited, they have their self-esteem exploited, and that takes them down many dark paths, which otherwise they probably wouldn't be. They tend to watch a bit more of these TV shows than men, where there's going to be a lot of this subtle social suggestive programming inserted into, and which is more relative to relationships. I mean, guys watch a lot of TV too, but it's not as focused on relationships and stuff like that. So a woman might watch a show called, Sex in the City or Desperate Housewives or some shit like that, and start thinking that that's the norm, or something like, Bad Moms or whatever, one of these shows that's supposed to teach women what a relationship is supposed to be like, what they're supposed to be entitled to, and all this other nonsense, and they consume that stuff, they eat that stuff up, and of course that's what they come to expect. I think by and large what I've come to find is that if we as men bite our tongues strategically, while not at the expense of our own masculinity and our own pride and our own, just sense of integrity, I think that if we make little concessions, you can make things work. I think what happens is that we get very proud and we don't want to be disrespected. We want, to be equal in all situations. When I've found that in order to make women happy, if I can just bite my tongue at the right times, it's not that hard. I may not agree with the attitude of a lot of women nowadays when it comes to relationships. I mean, I don't agree. But at the same time, if I choose my battles wisely, I can easily avoid a lot of unnecessary conflict and thus financial, economic hardship that comes with something like separation, which is just, devastating for a lot of people. And more often than not, it's the man in the relationship who is more concerned about the financial outcomes of something like that, because we're very rational minded when it comes to these things. We realize the importance of making something work in spite of the fact that it might not be perfect, because it makes financial sense to do so, whereas oftentimes I find women will more so take the more romanticized approach of, well, it doesn't matter how much it's going to cost, life isn't worth living if it's like this, regardless of how superficial the disagreement might be. So this is something that's going to change when resources become more scarce. It doesn't matter if it's a gradual or incremental collapse. I read an article the other day that found that divorce declined as the economy got worse, because it was just simply too expensive to get a divorce. So couples were forced to stick through it, through thick and thin. Now, the way they painted it out in this article was that they made it sound very negative, that, oh no, couples aren't getting divorced and they're being forced to stay in these unhappy marriages and whatnot. Not talking about perhaps maybe people are just finding ways to be more resourceful, to be more open to finding alternative solutions, to realizing that life really isn't that bad because we have all these wild expectations of how perfect life should be, which is complete and utter bullshit, because 5 to 6 billion people on the planet probably have it worse than you if you're living in a first world, particularly a Western country right now. It's just from a financial, material standpoint, you're probably doing a lot better than all of them. And I know that's not the only purpose in life. I get that, because that there's not a direct correlation with material prosperity and happiness in the world. You'll go to poor countries and you'll find people are happier there than they are here, where we supposedly have it all. And this is going to be one of the positives of an incremental or sudden collapse, is that we're all going to be forced to suck it up and learn once again that life isn't all sunshine and rainbows, that shit has to be hard sometimes. And another thing that pisses me off is that parents are so scared to give their kids a challenge nowadays, as if it's going to kill a kid to have to walk to school one day, as if it's going to kill them to have to do something extra in order to, I don't know, to get their allowance or something like that. Parents are such pussified people nowadays that they can't bring themselves to putting any challenges on their kids. And what they're doing their kids an injustice. Not only is the real cutthroat world that we live in not like that, but in the future, if shit ever hit the fan, you're setting your kids up for disaster if you totally pamper them in every way. And this is another area where men and women tend to differ, is that men typically want to instill those values, or at least myself, I want to instill those values in my kids, that, hey, it's important to take the hard way. It's important that you are challenged. It's important that we don't bend over backwards and do everything for you, and that you have some responsibilities so you're better prepared to go out there and be an adult in the real world. But because we live in this gynocentric society now, and they're promoting this codependent mentality that says that mom's going to do everything for you and you don't have to do anything for yourself. You know, if there's a bully at school, don't stand up to them. And that's another thing. You don't have dads telling their kids to stand up for themselves anymore, because that's taboo now. If there's a bully problem, all of a sudden it's everybody's problem. And it's not just, okay, well, put the bully in his place like it was in the old days. You know, settle it out, learn something about life, move on. Now it's this tattletale, rat, narc-based society where you run and tell mom, or you just don't deal with the situation yourself. And that's going to have dire consequences. It's going to work itself out to one of the biggest idiocracies in history. And the problem is that is going to converge on the collapse. So you're going to have ecological, economic collapse converging with the total dumbing down, infantile, codependent, can't do anything for myself, entitled generation. Those things are going to collide, and that's just going to be a total disaster. So anyways, I think I've ranted long enough here tonight. Let me know what you think in the comments. This was the tell-all video about all my cultural critiques. So let me hear what you have to say. Thanks for watching. Canadian Prepper out.